Okay, hopefully, Jules, you're ready. It's part of our meeting now for our guest speaker. To some of us, she needs no introduction. Those of us who did the beach clean back in, was it September, wasn't it? I think we did it this year, October last year. I lose track of time. But Jules and myself co-organised the beach cleans. The Marine Conservation Society do some great work. And it's great that Jules has been able to join us tonight to tell us a bit more about the work they do. So, Jules, the floor is yours.
Okay, so hi everyone. It was really interesting to hear what you're doing. I was like, oh, I want to do that. But I'm going to talk to you about what we got up to on the Great British Beach Clean, rather than everything that MCS does. So I'm just going to have that awkward moment of sharing the screen. So just bear with me. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Yep. Everyone okay? Good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Great British Beach Clean we did in Plympton. Oh, well, it wasn't in Plympton, it was in Plymouth. And what we got up to. But first of all, we're going to start with a little quiz just to make sure you're still awake. So here are 6 litter items that I found on Southwest beaches. You should be able to move your little controls around by just dragging them if you can't see all of it very well. So they're numbered 1 to 6. So have a little look at those while I'm talking to you about who I am and what the Marine Conservation Society does. And then we'll come back to that at the end. And see if you can identify not only what they are, but who would have been using them in what industry, or for what cause or reason, and how you think they might have got to the beach. Okay, so it's a bit of a mouthful, so bear with me. I am the Volunteer and Community Engagement Manager for the Marine Conservation Society, or MCS, in Southwest England. So that takes up quite a lot of space on my business card. And I've been working for the Marine Conservation Society for 6 years in the Southwest, and I go out and engage with people and with groups and try to get people involved in our activities. And we worked together for the first time last year with Plympton Rotary, so it's been really, really fun. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. We'll come back to it at the end. Let's just make sure this. So the Marine Conservation Society was set up in 1978, and we're a national charity in the UK, but we also work in British overseas territories on 3 key areas: ocean recovery, clean seas, and fisheries and aquaculture. So we try to look at the sea as a whole, rather than focusing on particular causes or issues. So our ocean recovery work is focusing on trying to increase biodiversity in the sea, protecting species and protecting areas, and also restoring it. So we look at creatures from the very small, like this little hermit crab who's frozen on my screen, right up to the big critters like basking sharks, which are the 2nd biggest fish in the world, and also resident in our seas. So although the little hermit crab seems to have stopped moving, was not actually harmed during the video making and was returned safely to his or her rock pool. You'll be pleased to know. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's because I paused it. Sorry. There you go. Very cute. Oh, I can't get it to advance. There we go. So one of the big projects that we're working on at the moment is called the Life Recreation Remedies Project in Plymouth, and also in the Fowl Estuary in Cornwall, and Isles of Scilly and Dorset in the Solent, Hampshire border. And we're trying to restore seagrass, which is an amazing habitat for lots of creatures like this spiny seahorse, which we do have in the UK. But it's really important for soaking up carbon. So it's a really, really good buffer for climate change, but it's also really affected by changes in the climate. It's been really damaged, particularly in Plymouth, by mooring from yachts and other kinds of boats. So we're trying to restore the seagrass and also tell people like yourselves about how important it is, not just for us, but for the whole planet, and for the services it gives us in terms of climate. So that's one of our big projects, and hopefully you'll let me come talk to you about that again one day. Okay, so we also have sustainable seafood team who are working on fisheries and aquaculture, trying to get those industries to be more sustainable. We work with government, we were working with the EU, not so much now, to try and work towards more sustainable fishing and aquaculture. And we also try to make it a little bit easier for people who are buying seafood to identify what are the better choices, rather than the ones that we always rely on, like cod, salmon, tuna, prawns, which then become overexploited. So we produce our Good Fish Guide, which has simple ratings to enable people to make better choices. And our third work area is clean seas and beaches, which I'm going to focus on today. We're trying to reduce pollutants entering the sea. They might be litter, they could be chemical, organic waste, or microfibers. And they all affect not only the marine life in our seas, but also people who want to bathe and enjoy them. So marine litter is obviously a big visible problem in the sea, and we think hundreds of thousands of creatures every year are killed by our litter. We don't know because it's really hard to actually find them and quantify that. So they suffer from entanglement, not only in fishing gear, but things like balloon strings and plastic bags. Once they're caught up, they can't go off to feed, or they may need to surface to breathe, something like a turtle, so they could end up drowning. And then ingestion, a lot of what we see inside animals that have died from eating litter is plastic, and they just get full of plastic, think that they're full up and stop feeding, and so eventually starve, like the seabird. So litter is still blighting our UK beaches, but we're really lucky down here in the southwest, particularly in Devon. We don't see so much of this kind of thing anymore. People have made a fantastic effort, really joined together to get out there and clean up our beaches and keep them relatively clean. But there are still places around the UK and definitely around the world where there's still a very visible amount of litter on the beach. So just have a think, what do you think the top 5 items of litter are that we find on our beach cleans in the UK? Now this picture is not a clue, and that's sort of a clue. So you can write it in the chat and we'll come back to that afterwards. So we're trying to engage with people and get them to care more about the sea and to produce less pollution and less waste. And one of the ways that we engage people is to bring them along to a beach clean and get them involved and show them the issues and also potentially the solutions. And our Beach Watch programme has been running since 1993. So this is the 27th year. Of course, I'm far too young to have been doing it for 27 years. But it's been a really successful project. And so Beach Watch is our overall programme, and we run beach cleans all year round. They are mainly run by fantastic volunteers who then get local people along to join in. And all of our events are listed on our website, which you can see there. And then on the 3rd weekend in September every year, we try and get as many people out as possible for the Great British Beach Clean. And there's usually hundreds and hundreds of those events taking place with thousands of volunteers joining in. And it's over the same period as the International Coastal Cleanup, which some of you guys joining in from other countries might have heard of as well. So it's a really, really big effort. So we don't only clean the beach, we also on all of our events do a survey, and we usually do 100 meters along the beach, and then we take from the strand line to the back of the beach for a particular set area in which we pick up all the rubbish that is there, even the tiny bits, and we try to count it and categorize it. So we also need to know the width of the survey area, how many volunteers have taken part, so we can get a measure of survey effort, and then we weigh and count and record all of the litter that we find in that area. So why bother? As you can imagine, that's quite a big task if you're trying to pick up everything in a 100-meter stretch on quite a big beach, and you've got small items that you really have to get down and have a look for. So the point of it is so that we can find out what is becoming an issue on our beach. And we have a survey form like this where we break it down by material on the one side here. I can actually use this. So you break it down by material. This is plastic. As you can imagine, a lot of what we find is plastic. I'm sure you can understand why. It's very long-lived. So it's a great material for lots of things, like your sunglasses. The sunglasses used to be made out of turtles, which is really bad use of turtles. So making sunglasses out of plastic is really good. But if you're making things like cotton bud sticks, which are only used once out of plastic, that's not such a good use of the material. But we don't only find plastic, we find metal items like this ring pull, which we found in September, which is an old style one, and then plenty of pollutants, to put it nicely, bags of dog poo, and that's probably the most common pollutant that we find. So one of the things we find quite a lot are these. If you know what these are, you can pop that in the chat as well. On the left, they're quite flat, and on the right, they're quite bumpy, but they're all just a few millimeters long. So our Beach Watch programme is an example of citizen science, where we have people like you come along and help us to gather data, which we couldn't do as much on our own. So we really need to get people involved, but it's also really, really powerful. It gives us information that we can use to help campaign for behaviour change and legislation change. So we were able to use our years of data to show, for example, that plastic bags were increasing up to 2011 on UK beaches. So UK government actually used our data to show that there was a need for a levy or a charge on plastic bags. And then after the first charge was introduced, I'm sure you remember, as a bit of a to and fro in, first in Ireland, then in Wales. But after the first levy, we have an overall decrease up to last year of 61%. So we are also able to show that the measures that are being put in place are actually working and having a positive effect. So it's not always, we're not always using the data for bad. Sometimes we're not showing up bad things, but sometimes positive change as well. So last year for the Great British Beach Clean was a big one. We had 10,000 people out across the UK. These are England figures. We had 437 beach cleans, and we removed 10.8 tonnes of litter, which is a huge amount. But if you have a look at the figure for the Southwest here, it's it's quite small, so less than half tonne. And that's pretty standard for the Southwest. We don't really find huge items, except for the occasional big fishing net on certain beaches. But we find lots of light stuff. So we'll have a little delve into why that is in a minute. And overall, you can see this is a graph showing all the data here from 1994 so we don't include the first year, and we were at 200 items per 100 metre on average across the UK. This blue line is the UK average, and these are the different countries. And now we're here, we're at roughly 558 items per 100 metres on average. But it's been a bumpy road, as you can see, a lot of up and down. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is that in the last 2 years, we've had an overall decrease in the UK by 16% in 2018 and 7% in 2019. And in the Southwest, a really big decrease of the number of litter items of 20.4% between 2019 and 18. We've still got 766 items per 100 metres, which is still a lot of rubbish, and it's still higher than the UK average. But we're cautiously optimistic because we're on a downward slope here. So it looks as if potentially all the beach cleaning, all the campaigning, raising public awareness about single-use plastics and so on is having an effect. Now, we have had downs before, which have then gone up again, so we have to be a bit cautious, but we are optimistic. So can beach cleans do more than clean beaches? Do they help the people that go on beach cleans? Well, some of you might disagree if you've ever been on a rainy one, but they do. It has been shown that they increase people's well-being. Just being out on the beach does. But if you add an element of science into the beach clean, it shows that a week later, the people involved still have an awareness of marine conservation, and they also are more likely to want to volunteer again. So we've done some surveys on this. So it's a really great way of boosting your volunteer base, not only for the Marine Conservation Society, but hopefully for other volunteer organisations that partner with us, like you guys. So I'm going to run through what we did in a pandemic, because that was quite interesting. So your esteemed president and I spent a lot of time talking about how do we do the Great British Beach Clean in a global pandemic. And we went back and forth quite a lot about whether to do it, how to do it. But we've been, the MCS have been cleaning Bobbisand Beach since 1997, so we've got a strong data set for that. And it's also, so we have data going back for quite a way, not continuous, but also it's a beach that's really used by local families and local people. So it's really good to keep an eye on actually what's going on there. So we decided we would do it. And you guys had helped us in 2019. We've run a very successful event before. It was really good fun. We had loads of people, loads of different groups involved. But this year was a bit more difficult because by the time we came to do the beach clean, which we started planning a year ago, we had a functional rule of 5 people could come along. So how do you do an event with where you want to get as many people engaged as you possibly can when you can only have 5 people along? Wow. So we put our heads together and we came up with a plan, and then another plan, and then another plan. And then we finally came up with a plan that we thought might work. So we had 3 little teams of 5 starting at different times, ending at different times, and doing slightly different things. And we were ably assisted by 2 of our MCS volunteers who came last year, John and Vashali, who also live in Plymouth. So Team A, led by John, did the beach clean survey where they were actually counting and categorising all the litter. Team B, led by me, we just did a beach clean and picking up as much as we possibly could. So it's much easier to stay socially distanced without doing the survey. Poor John had to wear a mask so that he could help people and talk to them and help them identify things. And then we had Team C, who are the nerdlers, and they were led by Vashali with some of the guys from Santander and some Rotarians as well. So they got down on their hands and knees and did a nurdle hunt. So that's what these are. So on the left, we have nurdles or mermaid's tears, the flat kind of coloured ones, sometimes transparent. And on the right, we have biobeads. And Team C, the nurdlers, found 746 of these in an hour and a half, which is quite a big load. So what are biobeads? I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they're these quite ugly looking, very small, under half a centimetre beads, and they are used to filter sewage in certain sewage treatment works, one of which is in Plympton. And there's an interesting paper here written by Turner from Plymouth University with some people from the Cornwall Plastic Pollution Coalition, looking at where these actually come from. And they're not evenly distributed across the southwest. There are pockets where there are very, very many, and then areas where there are not so much. So we think most of the biobeads that we found on our survey come from the Plympton sewage treatment works, and they get lost when they're topped up. Sometimes the system breaks, and sometimes they rub against the hardware and sort of burst out. And then nurdles. So these are the pre-production plastic pellets. They're the building blocks for pretty much everything that's made of plastic. So they're created as tiny plastic pellets, melted down, and then reformed into things like bottles or toys, or they're used in the construction industry, so many things. The 600 nurdles goes to make one small plastic bottle. But how do they become litter? Well, there's so many ways, essentially. They can be lost at all different stages from where they're being made. They're then transported, sometimes in these quite flimsy sacks like this. They're transported by road, they're transported by sea, and they can get lost at lots of different stages. Once they are lost, they're very easy to lose them and spill them. They're really difficult to clean up, so people don't bother. There's no onus on the industry to do so. And they're windblown, they float on water, so they travel very, very far, very quickly. Public don't know much about it, so there's very little pressure put on companies to actually clean up a spill once it happens, and it's completely not regulated. And they cause a massive problem in the sea and in wherever they are, because they're ingested really easily by lots of animals because they're so small. And then on top of that, they concentrate toxins like DDT and PCBs onto their surface. Those chemicals don't like to be free in the water, so they cling on to the pellets. And then when they're eaten by things like seabirds, which are diving through the surface water, so you can see here they're all concentrated, then they take in not only the plastic, but also the toxins that are associated. So really not good news at all. That was a bit of light relief. Not everybody was counting and categorising on the beach clean. We had Laura along from Serendipity Seacrafts. She's a local businesswoman, and she collects all the stuff, or she collected all the stuff from our beach clean and turns it into these beautiful pictures and other art pieces. So a great idea for a Christmas present. You can say, I actually helped to collect. If you're on that beach clean, I helped to collect all the junk that went to make these beautiful pictures. And she's got her own little shop. So what else did we find apart from nurdles? So for those of you who tried to guess the top 5, on the left is the UK top 5. So we have at number 1, plastic and polystyrene pieces, little bits up to 50 centimetres, cigarette stubs number 2, glass pieces, string and cord at number 4, and then packets. Anyone get those right? I can't see the chat. Oh, I need to put it on. I'll put it on in a minute.
Looking
Anyway,
looking at it, Jules, I was following the chat. The main answers which were coming up were plastic bottles and disposable masks.
Ah, interesting. So, well, at Bovisand, we found plastic polystyrene pieces as well. And number 2 was fishing line. Number 3 was slightly bigger plastic pieces. We divided it into different categories. And we had quite a lot of clothing. We usually find a pair of pants on every beach clean. I'm not sure if we did, but lots of bits of cloth. And then string and cord was number 5. And then looking at the UK top 10, plastic and polystyrene pieces is number 1 again. And then we have fishing line. Oh no, sorry, this is Bovisand, top 10. Plastic and polystyrene. And you can see at number 7, we have plastic caps and lids. Now, if I bring in the top 10, you can see that number 7 in the UK was also caps and lids. We have some quite different things in there. Pockets, we didn't have many of those. And wet wipes, we didn't have many of those either. And fishing line was number 2 on our beach, and right down at number 9, UK wide. But on both cases, the most common thing was plastic pieces. And it's not really surprising because so much plastic is created every year. And it goes directly into the sea, but it doesn't actually rot. I'm sure you know this. It just gets broken down by sunlight and by waves into smaller and smaller pieces all the time. So pretty much every bit of plastic that's ever been produced that ended up in the sea is still there in some form. It just gets smaller and smaller. And so that's why we end up finding everything that would have been a plastic bottle over time just becomes a small bit of unidentifiable plastic. And eventually it will become so small that it's turned microplastic, so it's under ½ a centimetre. And just like the nurdles, tiny bits of plastic that come from other things also concentrate toxins onto their surface and are also really ingested easily by lots and lots of creatures, even plankton. So I've given you a little list of places you can find some more info, but there's a video of plankton eating a tiny bit of plastic, and eventually that will go right up the food chain and possibly into us, and we don't yet know the long-term impacts of that on human health. But we did find a lot of fishing litter as well, and fishing net and rope used to be made of natural material. Now it's plastics. It just can go on fishing for a really long time. This one's acting as a kind of island in the big open ocean for fish and barnacles to cluster around. And we also found this fishing knife. We think it's a fishing knife down on Bovisand. So it just reflects that that beach, like many in the southwest, often has a high proportion of fishing litter compared to the national average. So we also look at the sources of where the litter we find has come from. So we do exactly what I was asking you to do with the quiz. We look at the items and we think, well, where did that come from? So that then we can identify, so how did it get there? How did it get into the sea? And how can we stop it rather than picking it up afterwards? So most of what we find UK wide is non-sourced, and that's because it's those tiny little pieces that are unidentifiable. We don't know where it came from. Then around 30% is from the public and just under 15% from fishing. And just about 6% from SRD, which is sewage. Then we have shipping, fly tipped waste and medical waste. So the public is about 30% usually. If we look at Bovisand, we had public 20.4% as opposed to 30%, and fishing 22.7% as opposed to 15%. So you can see there that it's reflected that this beach is quite near a port, it's near a harbour, and in the southwest we find this quite regularly. But at Bobby Sound, the results do change over time, but we do generally find there's a lot more fishing litter than the UK average. We didn't find any cotton bud sticks, but they have been found at Bobby Sound in the past. It's possibly because we weren't surveying the whole beach, so we didn't do the bit with the stream. So sewage debris comes down the watercourses when people have used a cotton bud stick and then thrown it down the toilet, and it ends up coming out in sewage outfall when it's stormy, and they end up on the beach that way. And we've just had in the UK introduced or in England, a ban on the supply of cotton bud sticks, stirrers and straws, which we campaigned for a long time. So we're very happy about that. So I've got some smiley faces up there. So do cheer if you want to. That was long, hard fight, but there's still more that we could do to change materials for things that are only used once, like bottles, from the current plastic which lasts for such a long time. Face masks, wow. It's funny because a year ago, if I'd been cleaning that beach and seen that, I probably wouldn't have known what that was. It would have taken me a while to figure that out. But now we're so familiar with them because they're just being dropped everywhere. So you see that blue and you immediately know what that is, which is really, really strange. And we had lots of anecdotal evidence that this was becoming a problem. And Emily, who we were talking about before, has done some really good stuff in North Cornwall, actually counting them. So we're hoping that our data this year will show us some figures that we can actually use to try and drive behaviour change, to try and get companies to be more responsible about their labelling, about their pricing, and try to get people to use more reusable masks wherever possible. So other things that happened on that Great British Beach Clean time. So Emily, who we were talking about before, did 5 beach cleans with her volunteers in North Cornwall, and then I went along to help sort them into the categories, where we did find some very large pants and 1 shoe. There's always 1 shoe on every beach clean, never 2, it's always 1. So we made a video about that, which you can see on her Facebook page or on Twitter at Plastic Wave. It's quite funny. She made me do the funny bit, and then she looked all serious and scientific. And then the International Coastal Cleanup happened. We don't know to what level. This is 2019 figures, but we took part also in 2019 because our data from our beach clean that we did then would have gone towards that. So there were 94,000 people took part in 2019, and 32.5 million items of litter were removed worldwide in over 100 countries. So amazing effort. And number 1 there for the first time last year was food wrappers, overtaking cigarette butts for the first time in 30 years. And they also chart their weird finds, and some of their highlights were a sofa or couch, a garden gnome, and a rubber chicken. Poor rubber chicken, lost and lonely. And we had our own weird finds. These were all found from Bother Sound over the years. We do tend to find a lot of dinosaurs for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. But Sherlock Holmes there is a Burger King toy, and they have now agreed to stop, or have already stopped, putting free toys in their meals, thanks to a campaign by 2 little girls in the UK who really campaigned hard and got that change to happen. And McDonald's are saying they will stop doing it. We found this dinosaur was from China, although I'm sure it wasn't lost there. And this one had a very strange hole, which I'm not really sure what that's for. So that is my weird finds from Bovisand. So what next for us? Well, we're going to organise the spring clean with the Rotary Club, hopefully. And I'm sure we'll do it somehow. Darren was amazing with this beach clean. I have to say that organising was really, really complicated, and he was so patient. He got all the teams sorted out. So massive, massive kudos to him, because that was not an easy job. And we're going to collate the 2020 data from all the other beach cleans that were happening. We know that there was around 300 and something as opposed to 400 and something the year before, which isn't bad considering. We're going to join in with Preventing Plastic Pollution in Plymouth, who are looking at the sources of beach litter, and also looking at the rivers to see a catchment level approach of how the litter is getting there in the first place. And we'll be working with some partners to try and get to some more inaccessible places. And what next for you? Well, you could take part in the beach clean that we are running if you're here. You could take part in our plastic challenge, which happens in July, but you can do it anytime. Try and give up single-use plastic for a month and see if you can do it. It's not as easy as you think. Or you can do a nurdle hunt anywhere. So FIDRA are our partners with the nurdle hunt, or they actually run it. So they have a global map. So I entered all the findings that we had onto a map, which you can see here. And they have this globally on their website. So you can see wherever there are gaps where there's no data, you can do it in as little as 10 minutes, any beach, any riverside, just go out, have a look, are there any nurdles there, take a photo and upload your results. And yep, have to do the obligatory follow us on Twitter, Instagram, but we do have a great e-news which tells you all about our upcoming campaigns, including microfibers, which is our next campaign. So thank you to everybody that took part at Plymouth and also everywhere around the Southwest. These are some of my Sea Champion volunteers, and shame we couldn't get the public along, but we had a great time and got some good data anyway. And massive thanks to you guys for coming and helping as well. Here's the quiz answers. So, ready? Number 1, plastic ducks. So they seem to be turning up. There's a lot of charity duck races on rivers, and they don't always all get collected at the end. Number 2, did we have any answers for that? I should look at, let me find the chat.
There is nothing in the chat, I'm afraid, Jules. So just fire away with the answers, I think.
Okay, number 2 is, try and get that. Oh, hang on. Oh, I see. I can either have chat or have it working right. Oh, there. So it's this kind of rubber strap, rubber and plastic, and they're used around the bottom of lobster pots, and sometimes around the lid as well, lobster and crab pots. So that came from fishing. They break all the time because they perish in the sea and in the sunlight. Yeah, find lots and lots of them. Toothbrush. So yes, incredibly, a lot of people brush their teeth when they've worn out their toothbrush, throw it down the toilet, and eventually in a storm the big overflow pipes will open and it will just come out like that. Number 4 is angling fishing line, and as I said, on Bobby Sound we find lots of that. It's very, very light, so the fact we get a lot of fishing litter in the Southwest is part of the reason we don't have such heavy stuff. Up in Scotland they get oil drums and really heavy paint pots and all of that. Number 5 is a fishing box, so used in fish farms and also on fishing boats, made of polystyrene, so when it hasn't got fish in it, it blows away really, really easily. And number 6 is a balloon string, which is actually the tether So you can have a latex balloon, which will take about 4 years to break down in the sea, but the plastic tether for it and the string for it will last for a lot longer than that. So that's a bit of what we did on our Great British Beach Clean run through, and yeah, really looking forward to doing it again, but hopefully it will be a bit easier next time. I can't hear you, Darren, now.
If you can stop sharing there, Jules, we'll see if there's any
Yep.
questions at all. One of the things I'd just like to say is thank you for bringing back some nightmares with the planning documents there. That was scary. I know there were a few.
You did a good job.
Oh, thank you. There have been a few questions in the chat, but I think they have been answered. One thing it's not a question, but certainly I was just going to mention, you just showed lobster pots. I mentioned earlier on in the meeting, Emily speaking to the Canadian District's conference last weekend. She actually in her presentation showed some tags from lobster pots that had actually been put in the sea in Canada. And I think the Canadians were so surprised to see that they had washed up on beaches over here in Cornwall. Yeah, we do get quite a lot of tags that you can identify. And yeah, we always we ask people to write that down. So we try to trace it. It's really interesting to see how the currents do transport litter around. We found stuff from France, quite a lot, Spain, Netherlands, all here in the southwest. Cool. So are there any questions for Jules? We've got time for a few there.
I'd just like to make a comment. Yeah, on International Coastal Cleanup Day, a lot of Rotary clubs in Jamaica come out and do beach cleanups. My club
is
very active in it every year. But unfortunately this year we had planned all kind of social distancing and so on, and the government told all the groups that would normally do it not to do it because of COVID issues. And I also wanted to say that last year somebody did point to me that the number of the large plastic shopping bags that people used to get in supermarkets had gone right down. And I think these bans on thing and encouraging people to use a cloth reusable shopping bag does seem to be working.
Yeah, here in the UK, the charge is going up again because some areas we found that it was starting to creep up again because 5p wasn't enough. So yeah, it's going up to 10p. But it's a shame you couldn't do your beach cleans. We thought long and hard about it. It was really tricky. It was really tricky, and it was hard to get that balance between, should we do something that's trying to do good? We did quite a thorough risk assessment, but yeah, if we'd been told we couldn't, we would have stopped.
It is a pity, and I wonder how, like, if we do it next year, we might find 2 years worth of junk.
Oh, fingers crossed for you guys.
Yeah, Shannon.
Hello, Jules. Thank you. That was a lovely presentation. Hi. Really appreciated it. You made me laugh several times. I appreciate your delivery. I was wondering if any of those plastic ducks were ever found in costume. Did any of them have a disguise of any sort? Because if so, then you probably should hold the city of Huntington Beach accountable, because they used to have an annual duckathon where we would dump a literal ton of rubber ducks off the end of a pier, and the first one back to the shore, though there were prizes associated. But I'm fairly confident we collect and make sure we get them all back. But if you notice any ducks in disguise, let me know.
Okay, definitely. It was a bit of a fad. I think it's died down a little bit. People have realised,
I remember in my Rotaract days back in the 90s, we did a few duck races down along the Plym, down the estuary, down by the police station there, to those of you who are in Plympton. But I always remember one year the guy organising it, the net he actually brought to try and catch the ducks beyond the finishing line, the holes in the net were a bit bigger than the actual ducks. So of course all the ducks just came through, it went just straight through the net. So it was quite funny watching sort of wading down the stream trying to catch them all. So
oh dear. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Before I pass over to Michelle to give a vote of thanks, one thing I'd also just like to mention, you mentioned about the prevent plastic pollution in Plymouth, which I think is to do with the plastic-free side of things in Plymouth. Beginning of this Rotary year, Rotary brought out a new 7th Avenue of service, which is the environment. And at that same time, we as a club signed up the plastic-free charter for Plymouth. So we're way ahead, and we've got links with Jackie Young already. So
yeah, she's great.
We're working on that already though.
It's a guy called Chris actually who works for the council, so it's a council thing and European funded under the Interreg project, and there's lots of partners in it, but yeah, so any beach clean that we do where we're collecting data, we want to try and link it together so the data comes to MCS, and so DEFRA and governments and worldwide can use it, and also it goes to their project as well. So we're trying to work together so that we're not, you know, competing with each other, but trying to help each other.
No problem. Okay.
I was just going to say, actually, don't forget Halloween and firework night. There are other things, other ways to do it without plastic. So
very true, very true.
Get your thinking caps on and yeah, come up with some great ideas for non-plastic Halloween and fireworks.
Definitely. Okay, so just looking at the time, if I'm passing over to Michelle to give the vote of thanks, please.
Jules, thank you so much for your presentation. It was absolutely fascinating to hear all about the areas that your organisation gets involved in, the 3 areas, and also your current project that you're working on, and also just to hear about obviously the organisation for the beach clean. For me personally, obviously I was involved in the nurdle collection, and I never knew anything about nurdles before I attended that beach clean, but I literally talk about nurdles like a lot now, so it really has done the job in terms of raising awareness, which I know is partly what you're looking to do. And I've learned something really new, which has really stuck with me, that glasses used to be made of turtles. I'm like, that's really just awful.
Yeah,
but also it's going to stick in my mind. So, but looking at the chats throughout, everyone has also already said how brilliant your presentation is. So I'm sure everyone will join in to say thank you ever so much for bringing that to us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jules. That was great. Really appreciate that.